Hey everybody, welcome to the Equine Vet Connect. We are a brand new podcast. This is our first episode. I think we call that the pilot. So this is going to be a podcast, everything equine med. If you've got questions, please drop us a line. Please let us know. We want to answer questions. We want to help dispel a lot of the myths out there. We want to talk about what's going on in the equine industry, what's going on in equine med. There's a lot of stuff out there, but we want to help you navigate your way through that. So with that, let's roll in and get started. Today's a really cool topic. I've got Dr. Caroline Brown, one of the other vets here at Countryside Equine Hospital. We're going to talk about how we got here, how we became vets. We're going to talk about the trend in equine med where people don't want to go into it, and for the life of us, we really don't understand why.
Oh, no.
So with that, this is Dr. Caroline Brown. Dr. Brown, how did you get here?
Well, I've been riding horses almost my whole life. I mean, it's kind of been the thing that I always knew, and I had always known for a long time that I wanted to be a vet, and watching my own horses go through, injuries and colic surgery and all the things that kind of just reinforced that. And I grew up outside of Chicago, and I don't know if you've ever been to Chicago in the winter, but it's not fun. So for vet school, I decided to go to Florida. Go Gators.
So let's question that. So you want to be a real vet and you choose to go to the University of Florida. Did you have to slow down for them to throw the degree into your car, or did you actually have to pause and stop?
We had a good time there.
Dogs.
It was nice. No, so I did my 4 years at Florida, and then after that I did an internship in South Carolina for a year, and then I met Dan through that, and we hit it off, and I've been here for the last 2 years now, I think. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and my interest is kind of stretched from everywhere. I really enjoy the repro work. That's kind of my my vet dopamine, if you want to say. The thing that I'm like, oh yeah, like what gets me excited is doing my little scan and just seeing that little black dot, and I'm like, got one.
I made that baby.
Yeah, I'm like, that's mine. I made that baby. So that's kind of my thing. But I really enjoy emergency too. I love when I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I don't really know what my day's gonna look like. I mean, I think almost every day this week, my schedule at the beginning of the day does not look like what it looks like at the end of the day. It's been just with everything. I think it's a full moon this week too, so that always kind of seems to throw a little wrench in things. But I enjoy it. We've had some very interesting cases this week, and that's kind of what I live for. I'm like, I don't want to do the boring, repetitive stuff. I like the little surprise, and you kind of have to think on your feet and get creative with it. And you get to do that in medicine a lot, but I feel like in equine med, it's just like you just take that to the next level, because sometimes it's just you in a truck, and you just kind of have to go out there and figure it out.
I love that choice of word, the vet dopamine, because I think if I had to describe equine vets, it's like we just don't want a real job, right?
No.
I mean, we get to be outside every day. We get to travel around, go hang out with horses, go hang out with people. Mm-hmm. And I think that vet dopamine, because you hear people talk about, oh, you got to be on call. It's like, well, yeah, but when that phone rings, you have no idea what it is on the other end of this. Mm-hmm. And I'm the same way. Like, a lot of people I'm on call. But to me, that's been some of my funnest times, right? Because you don't know what's coming. Mm-hmm. You get there. You get to help people. You get to help horses. I mean, the dopamine's real. Dopamine, happiness, fantastic. Mm-hmm. And I think that's awesome.
That's why we
do it.
Great choice of word. I think that's why we do it. So, yeah, I mean, I've met some fantastic clients, I think, from some of my on-call experiences. Maybe not, our best time. Sometimes we're really going through it, but I think that really just strengthens the relationship. I've made some really good connections there. I've learned a lot, and it's a good time to teach clients and educate them and learn things. I think I've even met some young kids who kind of watch what I'm doing. I'm suturing up a laceration, and then they go tell their 4th grade class about it, and then the parent gets a call from the office. So
I think that's interesting, and I think that's one of the things you hear a lot about. There's kind of an alarming trend now where people aren't wanting to go into equine med. And it's interesting because a lot of times we're actually discouraged when we get to vet school to go into equine med. Like, you've got people that say, like, you're not going to want to do that. You're not going to want to do that. But, and one of the things they bring up is, like, the having to be on call. But yet, I find enjoyment and a lot of satisfaction out of going to help people and help out with those emergencies. Sounds like you do the same thing. Did you have some of the similar experiences where you had professors telling you, like, hey, don't go into equine med?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and it started, I think, as soon as, like, my first year of vet school. And I went into vet school knowing I wanted to be an equine vet. That was kind of the only option. I think I went through, like, one kind of dark week of vet school where I was like, I could do small animal, but, you know, those thoughts went away. It was fine. It was a bad week. But, you know, they were just telling me, I think from week one, like, okay, you're going to be, you know, behind the bar when it comes to, you know, making money. You're going to, you know, really be burning out. You're going to be working, you know, 80 hours a week with no break and by yourself, and clients are mean to you, and you're going to, you know, this, that, and that. And the direct quote from a clinician of mine when I was in vet school was, you're going to be burning out, so you might as well be paying attention. And this was during a small animal rotation. So I was like, it's really discouraging, you know, when you're only like 2 years into vet school. I'm like, I haven't even started my career yet, and you're already telling me I'm going to fail. Like, I'm just like, you know, how is that supposed to make me feel? And, you know, I'm kind of that mindset. I'm like, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. But, you know, I know if you're hearing that a lot from clinicians, like, that can be really discouraging. And I know, at least when I was at UF, we had a lot of people, I think, that when we started wanted to do equine, and I think, had maybe more, like, statistically than some of the other schools, like, people that went into equine med and, you know, have gotten into it. But I even talked to, you know, some of my classmates that have been in here, and just hearing their experiences, like, you know, we're all in our first, like, 3 years of our career, and we're all in very different positions, and we all have very mixed feelings about practice. Some people, like, I mean, I love it. I can't be doing anything else. But I know other people are getting burned out. And I think it's, you know, kind of where they are and what their practice, you know, structure is like. And I think we have a very unique practice structure here that I think kind of supports us being able to sustain an equine practice. But, you know, a lot of places don't have that yet. So I think that is something that, you know, as we kind of grow as an industry, I think we really need to kind of support people in keeping these young vets in the practice. Like, I know there were some stats from AEP that they were looking at, you know, within the first 5 years, they lose 50% of the vets that start. Like, and that's in the first 5 years, like, which is crazy, because it's like, you know, I'm in there and I'm like, I can't think of doing anything else right now. So I'm like, gosh, like, you know.
You know, I was a similar situation. I was a farrier before I went to vet school, and I actually went because I was constantly talking to vets. It was a constant struggle, and so it started off with, I'm just going to go to vet school because it'll be easier. Was told I couldn't do it, and obviously I made it. But when I went to vet school, it's the same thing. Like, I was there to be an equine veterinarian. And in fact, when people ask me what I do, I never say I'm a veterinarian. I say I'm an equine veterinarian. I take a lot of pride in that. I love being an equine veterinarian. I'm just finished my 15th year as an equine vet. And I truly could not think of anything else I'd rather do. Like, I'm just as excited today. We were in here last night working on an emergency together, and I was just as excited last night as I was when I first got out. And I don't understand why. I don't understand why we don't express that excitement more. And I do think how it all starts is important. You know, when you hear that negativity in vet school, you get out and maybe you have that bad experience. I think it can set the tone for your career. And so I think one has got to start with, like, let's dispel the negativity. You know, you're only hearing, when you're in vet school, you're hearing from professors, and half of them most of them haven't even been an equine vet.
No, or if they were out in the field, it was, you know, decades ago. So, and things have changed quite a bit since then. So, for better and worse, you know, but I think that's why it's important, for these students that you need to get in with equine vets. It's like, and I know in vet school there's not a ton of time to do that, but, really use, your externships and vacations and whatnot, get in with equine vets, because we are here and we have a lot to teach. And, there's a lot of us that do enjoy having students, because we all remember what it was like to be a student. And, hearing that discouragement, I'm like, it's a lot, but I loved when I got to get in the truck with like actual vets who were like in the field doing it too.
Well, and it's interesting because we talk about mentorship. I did an internship as well. I did one in Kentucky up at Rood and Riddle. You did one at Southern Equine over in Aiken. And interesting enough, the person you interned with, he's a very close friend of mine. And I think he does a fantastic job of mentoring vets. And I think that's a big thing, is finding that right mentor program to help bring you along as a veterinarian, because you can't learn it all in vet school.
No.
And the one thing I can say is the person you work with, Jamie, like, he's been practicing, got to be going on 25 years.
Something like that, yeah.
And I can tell you, I spoke with Jamie the other day, and he was still just as excited about equine med 25 years later as he was when he first started. Like, I've known Jamie for 20 years. I knew him when I was a farrier. And he's become one of my close friends. And I've got several other close friends in equine med the same way, that we're just as excited now as we were 15, 20 years ago. But I do think a lot of it goes back to that mentorship. And so, like, I guess that's my question, is like, how do you feel like that mentorship affected you in that, for that first year?
And I think it's really important, at least for, getting those foundational skills, because at least where I was at UF, we had to spend a lot more time in the large animal hospital there. And most of those cases that are getting referred to the large animal hospital, those are like, the weirdest of the weird. You're getting the colics that the doctors in the field can't figure out, or they're really sick, they're going to surgery, they're needing all the intense care, but you don't really see, your kind of run-of-the-mill colic of a horse that's just, needs to just pass a tube and get some salt and they're good. Like, you don't really get to see that, or, you don't really get as much hands-on, just doing a regular little blockathon to, lance an abscess in a foot. You don't really see that. You're seeing
True.
like the absolute craziness of it. So I think, when you get out of school, you have all these crazy, ideas, like the zebras they tell you, like,
Correct,
and
yeah.
but you haven't seen just a regular horse. You haven't seen, your little just backyard horse yet. So I think having a mentor who can kind of expose you to just, your run-of-the-mill cases, and even just kind of working up, a regular, a wellness appointment, how that goes. There's so much in just, doing a wellness appointment, talking to the owner about, what's the horse's daily life like? What are their exercise? What's their diet? What are different things like that? Because there's so much that you learn just having those conversations with an owner, that you kind of need that in order to be a better vet. And I don't know if you necessarily get that when you're a student. And so I think having the mentor to do that and kind of walk you through that process and teach you and just kind of expose you to things, and, let you kind of start doing things on your own. Because in vet school, if you can't put the catheter in your first shot, they just walk out and they're like, tech takes over and pops it in and does that. But when you're getting a mentor, I mean, they'll let you just kind of keep doing stuff until you figure it out, and they'll give you the resources they need. They'll take the time to actually like teach you and let you do things. And I think that's important, because schools are supposed to do that, but they don't always do that. And it's and again, this is my experience with school. I don't know if this is everybody else's, but I think it's important for these equine students getting out. It's like, find these mentors now, ride with different vets, get their perspective, because I think we all do have something to teach. I think you can learn a lot from different vets. We've all been out here, we've all seen different things, and we've all got a story to tell and lessons we've all learned along the way that we were like, I think every one of us can answer, oh, man, I wish I had known this as a student. This would have helped me if I had known this 5 years ago.
Well, and that's one of the things I really love about the practice here is we have so many people from different backgrounds who've done internships in different places, who've had different experiences. And that's one of the things that we've always tried to do here at Countryside, because if everyone looks like me, if everybody looks like you, that's one perspective, but it's one perspective 4 or 5 times. I would rather have 5 different perspectives. I would rather have different ideas about things. Like one of my favorite things is when we do get a new vet in and we're working on a case, especially like a new grad, recent grad, someone who's done an internship. It's almost like the whole practice gets continuing ed, because I've been out of school for 15 years. Well, things have changed. We go to CE. That's one of the things that's very important to us here, is that continuing education. We read constantly, but there'll be some new thing that hasn't necessarily been a part of the continuing education literature, but that comes out of a vet school, especially different vet schools. I'm a Georgia grad, go Dogs. But we've got Georgia, we've got Auburn, we've got Florida, and I think those different knowledge bases, when you're working on a case, having that team, having people that have mentored with different folks, I think it allows for better care for the horse.
It does.
And so that's, I think you're, I guess where I'm going is I think you're dead on with the mentorship and how it adds value. Sort of like Duncan. This podcast does run on Duncan, so if Duncan wants to jump in, please let us know.
Please.
But I think that's very important, and I think structure of practice is very important. That's one of the things we're seeing is we're getting more and more larger practices, people coming together, which I think is a good thing, because it helps out with that quality of life. Because I've never met an equine vet that doesn't want to work.
Right.
And I've never met an equine vet that doesn't love what they do, but isolation's a big deal. We get to meet every Monday morning, right? Every Monday morning we're doing some type of a topic round. We constantly working together as a team. And just like mentorship, I think that team approach also helps keep people excited, keeps people in equine med. And I think that's a trend that we're seeing more and more in the industry.
Is this kind of coming together too? And I think it takes a lot of the load off too, even if you can just, share on call so that you aren't having to, be on call for 5 days in a row or 7 days in a row or whatever you may have it. Even if, I'm seeing these, single practitioners kind of team up within their area with other single practitioners and say, hey, let's kind of work together and collaborate so that we can kind of keep servicing our clients. And, and because I think one of the things too that, we keep hearing like this work-life balance, is that like, we do all love to work and that, but we want to be able to have our own lives. A lot of people, they have horses of their own that they want to go and ride. I think especially too with, the veterinary industry as a whole becoming more female dominated, there's this kind of pressure if you have, your children or family of your own, like how do you balance, getting to spend time with them and still being able to, work and continue your business and serve your clients. It's a lot, and you're getting pulled in all different directions that it can get really stressful. And I think that's what is adding to this kind of burnout that we're seeing, unfortunately. So I think, if we can kind of come together as a team of vets and be able to help each other out in this, I think, and, that's when I was looking for a practice, that was something that I was kind of looking at. I'd always kind of thought like, oh, it might be fun to have my own practice and, do my own rules and all that. But I'm like, that idea of having to, it's just solely me and I'll necessarily have somebody right there to bounce ideas off of or, help me out if I need some coverage, like after hours or something, that was a little stressful, especially, being a new grad. I'm like, it's been so nice to, be part of a team that does work together really well. And I think, like you said, we have a lot of different ideas. I think we're all very different, like in the way that we practice. I hear that from our techs all the time. We're a little different too, in that, like, we don't have one tech to one doctor pairing for the most part. We kind of all share the load, and I think that's good for them too, because they get to learn a lot too. They make comments about, they're like, oh, well, you do this differently than, Dr. Zoe does, or,
right.
Dr. Caitlin does, but it's kind of allows them to learn better too. And they're like, hey, there's not just one way to approach this problem, or, if they're trying to learn a skill of their own, they've got a couple different techniques that they can try until, figure out what works for them too. So.
Well, that's one of the things I really love, as well. I'm mainly a sport horse guy. Mm-hmm. Like, most of what I'm doing is sports medicine, and a lot of people think sports medicine is just strictly lameness, and that's not the case. It's going to flow into a lot of different things: airway issues, muscle issues, stomach ulcers, big issue. We'll get to that topic later.
That's like a whole podcast. That's like a multi-series podcast.
I'm telling you can go off in the weeds there quick. But one of the things I really like is I've become heavily focused in sports med and in sport horse medicine, which does involve, I'd probably say probably 80-85% some type of lameness, orthopedics, things like that. And so what I love about having that team is, let's say we are dealing with a mare that seems to be having some of those cyclicity issues, things like that. That's when it's great to have somebody like Dr. Brown that's like, hey, yes, I could go out here and scan this mare. Yes, I could do a workup on this. But I'm going to do 2, maybe 3 of those a year. You did that yesterday. Mm-hmm. And so that's one thing I love about having that team, is because I'm dealing with that issue. I can come to you like, hey, I need you to go look at this horse. Mm-hmm. Why? Because you've got more expertise in that than I do. I may be looking at that horse holistically, like I'm monitoring everything about him to keep him performing at his peak. But when I can go grab somebody like you and say, hey, this is an issue I think we're dealing with. I really need some more expertise on this. Mm-hmm. Can you go take a look and tell me what you think? And that's one of the things that I really love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's nice that we're all right here, and, we can do that. And I think too, because we all came from different backgrounds and, education, it's like we have people we can reach out to too. So, I mean, our network is just massive at this point, because if one of the 4 people in this building doesn't know the answer, we've got a contact list full of on our phones that we can start reaching out to, and its possibilities are endless at this point. So
I think we're all like 1-2 phone calls away from the industry expert,
pretty much.
And that's I think that's you don't have to know everything. Just know the person that does.
know the person. Yeah, exactly.
And that's if we don't know it, then one of us knows somebody that does.
Somebody who can at least kind of point us in the right direction. Yeah. And
I think that's the other part about having good mentors, is they teach you to leave your ego at the door.
Yes.
A good mentor will tell you, like, look, leave your ego at the door. If you're unsure, don't be afraid to make that phone call. I have stood in front of many a customer and had to tell them, like, I don't know the answer right now, but I know the person that does. Mm-hmm. I'm going to make a phone call, or you know what? I need to go do some digging. Like, we're going to fix this. We're going to get it solved. Mm-hmm. We're going to figure it out. Give me a day. Mm-hmm. And I've never had a person that was a concern with. Right.
I think being able to kind of show some grace is, I think the clients do, kind of appreciate that. Like, because again, I mean, we're all human too. Like, we're not perfect. We don't know everything, but I think being able to admit that, like, hey, like, we need a little help on this. I think just putting in that extra effort, they appreciate that. They're like, hey, they could just make something up on the fly and, say, all right, we're going to make this work and do this. And it kind of, maybe 50% it. But I'm going to take the extra time out of my day, in my personal time, to do some research, phone a friend, do whatever, and just so I can help your horse. And I think they do appreciate that. I think that just kind of shows that we are here for them. Like this,
Right.
this is kind of our life, and like this is again that dopamine.
That's that
So
dopamine.
it's the dopamine.
You know, like we meet every Monday morning, 7:00, and there's a paper involved. There's a case review involved. I don't know how many times at the end of the day we all meet back here at the hospital and like, hey, I've got this case. Hey, can you look at these images? What do you think's going on? And I think that starts. It's not just the fact that we're doing that, but I think it goes back to that mentorship of don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to admit when you don't know something, because it's not knowing that's the problem. It's not doing anything about not knowing that's the issue. So when you don't know the answer and you spend that time to go find it, you know, whether that's making a phone call, whether that's digging through the current literature, asking somebody in the practice, I think that's one of them. I think that starts by learning from a mentor that says, hey, don't be afraid to do this. And I think as new vets come out, I think it's important for you to understand, like, check your ego at the door. That's a big rule here at our practice. Like, we don't do egos.
No.
Like, no egos here. I think half of us go by our first name. I mean, it's just, don't do the egos. Like, what matters is, can we help the horse?
Right.
And that's what we ask ourselves every day is, like, what we're doing, is that what's right for the horse? And that's our, and you know, the other thing I think that's important too for new grads with these mentors, I like to say here at this practice, we are diagnostically driven. That phrase comes up on a daily basis. Be diagnostically driven. Go find the answer. Don't just throw random treatments at something and hope something works. Go do the diagnostics, find out what the problem is, get a targeted approach, know what we're dealing with. And again, I think that comes from good mentorship. That was a big thing with the internship I did. Reardon was very diagnostically driven. I know Southern Equine's the same way. Going and finding that answer.
Yeah. And I think it's important too for these new grads to understand too is that you are going to make some mistakes.
Yes.
You know, you're gonna pick the wrong diagnosis and go down this whole rabbit hole and end up at the dead end, or you're gonna start the wrong treatment and it doesn't work, and you have to go back to the drawing board and figure it out again. You're going to screw up, and it's like that's part of it. Unfortunately,
It is.
And I mean, that you just kind of have to learn to accept that. And is it frustrating in the moment? Absolutely. Is it occasionally devastating? Yes. But what's important is that you take that experience and you learn from it, and you remember what happened, and you just kind of go with it, and you just keep going. And it's I think that's why it's called we're practicing medicine. We're not doing medicine, we're practicing it, because just this one case is just kind of a little rehearsal for whatever the next case is along the way.
I always wondered why they call it practicing med. Why, doctors practice medicine, lawyers practice law, veterinarians practice medicine. And I've always wondered why it's even like, we don't even call it a medical business, a veterinary business, a law business. What is it? It's a medical practice.
It's a practice.
It's a veterinary practice. Because, I used to think, like, why do we call it a practice and not just go get it right? Well, then once you're in this, you understand.
Yeah.
It gets a practice, because you can do everything perfectly, think you've got the answer. You go down the treatment route. This should work.
It should.
And here comes the curveball.
It doesn't.
And we've got to back up. And, what's interesting, by having that approach of not having those egos, having that team approach, you come in, it's like, hey, I did this, everything's going great, it didn't work. And there's always that person that's like, oh, yeah, I did that too. I had one just like this. And here's what it was. And lo and behold,
there it is.
Here's what it was.
Yep.
So.
Again, I think school kind of teaches you too. This is the textbook answer. Like this is the little PowerPoint slide on like this is what this disease looks like and how it presents and all that. And then you go into the field and you're like, that is not what that is at all. I mean, I was laying in the dirt a couple days ago, suturing up a laceration just on a hill, and I'm like, none of this is
That wasn't in the brochure.
That wasn't in the
Not
textbook. Yeah, that wasn't. They didn't show me that in the brochure for vet
No.
school. They don't show that on the new grad photos, like all the little smiling new practitioners and their little things. I'm just laying in the dirt. I'm like, you know what? This is what it is. This is equine practice. Like,
Well, I think that's what makes it great. It's here we've got great facilities. We've got great people. We've got everything we need to do. Here, if your horse has a bone chip that needs to come out, we're going to the operating room in a controlled environment.
yep.
A month and a half ago, here me and Riley, one of our techs, are in the Cayman Islands. We got to take a chip out of a fetlock joint. Our operating room is a tent with a mosquito screen around it. Our operating floor is a tarp we put down. And here we are on our hands and knees making this work. And again, not in the brochure.
Nope.
But I'll tell you, I couldn't. It was a fantastic time.
All the clinicians in their ivory tower are like, ah!
Exactly. And one of the things I tell people all the time is, they talk a lot about this in vet school. They said, you've got to learn to say no. You've got to learn to set boundaries. You've got to learn to do this. I think my greatest experiences and my greatest times and some of the greatest opportunity I had came from saying yes. And I feel like the harder we teach them to say no and the harder we teach them to set boundaries, I feel like the less happy people become. I mean, like you had that experience, like, yeah, you're laying on the dirt sewing this leg up. It was a fantastic time. But you got it because you said yes.
I said yes. I could have easily said, sorry, I'm not doing this today. Like, we could have said no. And there were a lot of, scenarios going into that. It was already, end of the day, and I'm running out of drugs, and I'm like, okay, what are we, how could this go? This could go a lot of different directions, but you know what? It all worked out in the end. It all kind of came together, and I think I learned a lot from that experience, and I know my tech from that did too. And we had a nice little long hour drive on the way back from that, and we kind of, debriefed a lot. We talked about it, and, I think we're both going to be better at practicing because of that, and it's, again, was it the ideal perfect situation? No, not at all. And was it? But I learned a lot from it. I think it's one of those experiences that I'm always going to remember suturing up this laceration in the dirt.
When you think about it, you got to help the horse. You got an owner that's in a terrible situation. So their day was rocking along, and all of a sudden they're having a really bad day.
Yeah.
You said yes. You made the horse have a better day. The owner's having a better day. We had a great day.
Right.
And I think that's, when I talk to vet students all the time, because you're constantly hearing in vet school, set boundaries, say no, set boundaries, say no, set boundaries, say no. And I was like, you're learning this from unhappy people. Like, we're called to serve. Let's go serve.
Right.
I remember I got a call, oh Lord, it was 2013, 2014, like, hey, do you have a passport? Yes. Hey, would you come to Grand Cayman and look at some horses? Yes. I had no idea what I was getting into. I just said yes. I go there. I've been going for over 10 years now. I've done some really cool things on this island. I've got to jump on airplanes and fly down. Like, I'm in a 757 hanging out in the back of it with horses, flying down to an island. Because I said yes.
Yeah.
And so, like, if I could give new grads any advice whatsoever, get rid of the word no, because you're going to have a great time saying yes. And that's just one example. I mean, you're out there not in an ideal situation, but you could be you could be working in a cubicle and be like, what'd you do today? Like, I was typing on my computer and doing TPS reports and went over the water cooler for a little while. Yet you're an equine vet, like You kind of the life of the party.
Yeah.
At the social hour.
I do have some cool stories when I go to family events, or I went to a Christmas party with my husband, and it was a bunch of neurologists, and I was showing them pictures of abscesses I had lanced, and they were some of them thought it was cool, some of them I think were judging me kind of hard, but I was like, you know what, I have the coolest job in this room.
You
so
dang right.
like
You dang right. So I guess what advice do you have for students going into this field? They want to go into it, and I know it seems odd. We're talking to vet students on a podcast to reach horse owners, but we want to cover everybody. But at the same time, like, what would you tell students?
Yeah. So my advice for students is get out into the field, get out of the teaching hospital, go ride around with some veterinarians that are out here doing it every day. I mean, we got 4 vets here. We all like teaching. You can email us. We'll put our contact information down at the link of the podcast. I don't know where it's going to be, but it'll be there. You'll find a link and you can email us. And, just ride around with us, even if it's just for a couple days there, because we've all got stuff to learn. With most of our practice structures, we spend a lot of time in the truck, and there's a lot of time to talk about cases. And, you'll get an opportunity to be out there and look at, how real cases are done, how things are worked up, what our interactions with clients are like. And, I think that's going to be, step one while you're in school. And, while you're doing all this, while you're meeting all these vets, getting out here, find a mentor, find somebody that you really vibe with, that, you think can offer you something, and, talk to them. And, because that'll be important for when you do graduate, if you do decide to go directly into practice. I know a lot of vets are out here, and, if they're looking to take on an associate, or, find even somebody just to help with some relief work, I mean, that could be an opportunity for you. But if they don't have somebody, they might be able to connect you with somebody that they know and respect and can offer you mentorship. Same thing with an internship as well. If you decide to go that route, look at all these different practices, because again, they all have something to offer. And I did probably 6 or 7 different externships when I was in school, and some of those practices I didn't end up going to, obviously, but every one of those places that I was at, I learned something. And because you get to work very closely with those associates. If they have their own interns there, you get to work with them, and you have some cool stuff. And I have like a whole album of cases that I worked up and cool things that I did over the summer. I kept a little journal of like all the different cases I saw, and what they looked like and how they treated it and what the diagnostics were. So I'm like, I kind of have all that to go back and like look at. So I think that was something cool for me, and I still have a lot of the contact information for a lot of these vets, and I've reached out to them occasionally over the years if I'm seeing something and I'm not really sure what to do, and my contacts here don't know what it is. And so that's been really helpful, just having that kind of network of vets that I can reach out to and talk to, because most of them I feel like there was I was this afraid that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be bothering them. No, you're not gonna bother them, I promise. Like, we like to help people. Like, I love when I have people reach out to me, like some of my own colleagues that they don't see horses regularly, and they hit me up and they're like, hey, I've got this situation, I need some help. And I love being able to help people. I'm like, just it's part of it. We're all out here helping each other. And then, kind of the last little advice is, I wrote down on my little paper here, ignore the haters.
Yes.
So, all of these senior clinicians or, technicians or whoever who's telling you that you're going to burn out, that you're going to do this. And I kind of live by that philosophy. If you think that you're going to burn out, you're going to burn out. So,
Henry Ford said, whether you say you can or you say you can't, you're right.
Exactly. If you really truly think that you're going to burn out and you're going to do this, then you probably will. And so I think if you're really passionate about being an equine vet, I think you need to, try to change your mindset. I know it's easier said than done, but, really just get it through your brain that you can do this, and that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I know vet school is hard, internship is harder, and but you can get to practice and you can make it enjoyable. You have to put in that effort to do it, but it can be enjoyable, I promise.
Well, and I think we talk about a lot of these things, but there's never a relationship like gets built. No, I don't know of another field that builds a relationship like equine med. Mm-hmm. The number of weddings I get invited to, now that after 15 years I'm starting to become the old guy. The number of people I've watched grow up, and I really go back. I was a farrier for 10 years. So I've been 25 years as an equine professional. Mm-hmm. And the thing I look at is the generations I've now worked for. Mm-hmm. I've got one family. I'm literally I started working for the mother, and I was taking care of the daughter's horse. Mm-hmm. Took care of the mother's horses, took care of the daughter's horses. Now the granddaughter's got a pony. Oh, this is my third generation. I was there for a wedding, and it's interesting. Like over the years, watching people grow into horses, and I think something that still makes me smile. And I think these things you need to remember is when I watch these people grow up with horses, and I watch the lives that are changed because of that horse. And I watch how over time people continue to grow in this field. Like, it makes me excited. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite things is I love, I get to work on some really cool athletes, but some of my favorite things to watch are the first time that little girl gets on a pony. She's mm-hmm. taking her first riding lesson. Mm-hmm. I'm out there watching another horse go in the arena, and all of a sudden I see this smile, and I was like, oh, there's an addict for the rest of their life. Like, this person's never leaving.
Oh, yeah.
and you watch the joy they bring, and I think, I don't know of another field that does that.
Nope. Not that I can think of.
Don't. And I can't agree with Caroline as most, like, don't listen to the haters. Like, you want to be an equine vet, go do it. Enjoy every moment of mm-hmm. it. Even in the hard times, just remember, I had a job once. I'll never forget this. I had a job, and I had an office. I actually wore a coat and tie to work. I'd gotten out of college.
What?
Yes.
You wore a coat and tie?
I wore a coat and tie to work sometimes.
Oh, my God.
I got out of college. I did what you're supposed to do. I got a job. I was a nutritionist. I was an animal nutritionist. So I go get a job in the field. I'm going to an office. I'm doing what, like, my parents are, like, so proud of me, right? Because, like, I've got this job, and I'm, like, all professional. Uh-huh. I hated it. And I remember one day I was just sitting there looking around. I was like, I want to do this. Mm-hmm. And I always loved shoeing horses. I always loved watching a horse get shod. I always loved watching the farriers. And I literally, with zero plan whatsoever, quit my job, convinced the guy to let me apprentice with him, became a farrier. And I can tell you, there is no way in the world you'd ever get me back to wearing a coat and tie again.
Not enough money in the world.
Not enough money in the world. And if you tried to get me out of this job, like, no. Mm-hmm. I'm not doing something
Drag
else.
him kicking and screaming.
Yeah, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. It's really a fantastic job. Mm-hmm. So, I think if I were to give takeaways, anybody getting into equine med, summarize, like, find a great mentor.
Find a great mentor, get out into the field and, like, see how it's actually done, because there's a very distinct difference between what they're telling you is going on when you're in school versus what's actually happening. There's a big divide. So I think, if you're an equine student, get yourself out into the field, find some vets, go get in a truck and ride along for a couple days. You'll learn a lot. Your perspective will change drastically.
Block no out of your mind.
Yeah.
Learn to say yes. Mm-hmm. I can't say that enough. Mm-hmm. Say yes. It's going to get you some cool places. Mm-hmm. And like I said, don't pay attention to the people that say you can't. Because you really and truly, if you think about it, I've yet to meet an athlete somewhere that became top of their sport that wasn't told they couldn't make it. Mm-hmm. I was yet to meet anybody successful that wasn't told they couldn't make it. People are always going to tell you that.
Yeah.
Don't listen.
No.
Don't listen. Come hang out with people that say you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
this is going to be an inspirational podcast.
I think so.
I think we just, like, set the tone. We're going to be inspirational.
I think we did.
Yeah.
So I know this is probably a little different than what most people expected to hear when they tune into Equine Vet Connect, but we'll be bringing y'all some more episodes shortly. We're going to put together some great topics. If y'all have got things you'd like us to cover, we're going to cover those, and we're going to cover them with the same passion that we just covered this. So if you've got questions, if you've got something you want us to cover, topics, I'm not the most technologically advanced. How do they do that, Caroline? Do they...
You can DM us on any of our social medias. We've got Facebook, we've got Instagram, we've got a TikTok now. So you can DM us on any of those. You can drop a comment on any of our postings on any of these social media platforms. You can email us, equineinfo@countrysidevets.com. You can also give us a call. Maybe if you've got a horse or two that you're looking for a vet, hit us up. We've got 4 vets here that, love what we do, and we're ready to take on some more clients. So just, hey, if you can contact us, do it. You can just drop in too. You can just pull up and walk in.
I think the next CE meeting we have is going to be on what is a DM, but we'll figure that out. So send us a message, get in touch with us. We'd love to talk to you about more topics. We're passionate about what we do. We want you to have the right answers. We want you to have the facts, and we want you to have the information. So look forward to seeing y'all soon.